Good day to everyone. My name is Rainel van der Roos, and I will be giving you an overview of the study on engagement of academic staff during the COVID-19 pandemic. So on this slide, I have highlighted the title of the paper, which forms part of a bigger multi-level research project on engagement, of course, among academic staff and students. And this study is conducted as part of my PhD at the University of Pretoria. So just to give a brief background, we all are aware of the COVID-19 pandemic and the numerous challenges it posed to employees and organizations in all sectors. This global crisis has really resulted in radical changes within the South African higher education system, which required from academia a rapid transition from your traditional to the distance or blended learning model, just to ensure continuity of educational processes. This, of course, places an additional demand on academic staff who are already inundated with a plethora of roles they need to juggle. And from a JDR perspective, these additional demands placed on academic staff may have an impact on their burnout, their engagement, and well-being. I have highlighted studies which indicate that especially in times of change and uncertainty, to ensure success, one of the key strategic imperatives will be engaging the workforce. A more recent study also provided on this slide highlighted that now more than ever, engagement has become a key priority in terms of ensuring business success. Now, with engagement being the focus of this paper, I have put up on the screen the definition used. I would like to highlight here the various benefits of engagement to both the organization and the employee in terms of promoting full performance, creativity, connections to the work role and others, and playfulness, just to name a few. But irrespective of this established importance of engagement for the higher education sector, studies show that engagement of academic staff is still regarded as a phenomenon that has been neglected. So the aim of this study will be to explore the interplay of the three psychological conditions, namely meaningfulness, safety, and availability that lead to engagement, and of course its role in contributing to optimal functioning within the workplace. This will be done by connecting properties from Kant's theory on engagement with current concepts that focus on the person-role relationship, such as the JDR model, organizational support theory, and perceptions of reciprocity. So I have highlighted an overview of the hypothesized model on the slide. This, of course, is based on the various theories and empirical studies mentioned earlier. And I've also highlighted here the three psychological conditions of Kant's theory on engagement. So in this study, psychological safety and some criteria of psychological meaningfulness was operationalized as perceived organizational support. Then, of course, other components of psychological meaningfulness were operationalized as lack of reciprocity. And then lastly, availability was operationalized as burnout. Next, I will share the results of the study and, of course, some noteworthy implications. If we look at the setting and the participants, as noted earlier, this study formed part of a bigger multi-level research project. So we used a cross-sectional survey research design, and the setting was a university in one province in South Africa. We made use of purposive non-probability sampling, so participating academic staff members needed to lecture a second semester undergraduate model module during 2020 to meet criteria for inclusion. I've highlighted there that a total of 295 academic staff were invited, and of these, 219 started the survey. However, only 170 valid responses remained. Males comprised 52% of the sample and females 48%. And as you would note from the figure, the ages of participants ranged from categories of 29 years old and younger to persons falling within the category of 65 years and older. I've also highlighted the length of service in the various faculties, which ranged from less than 5 years to above 31 years of service at the institution. So in terms of the data analysis, we made use of M+ and followed two stages in the analysis of the data. Firstly, confirmatory factor analysis with ML robust for non-normal data was used. This to evaluate the measurement model fit and to examine the factor structure validity in terms of the various scales, of course. Secondly, the structure model was evaluated. The structural model of the direct, indirect, and moderator effects that form the focus of the study was tested using structural equation modeling. And then I've also just highlighted that correlation results were interpreted as small, medium, and large, as per the guidelines offered by Cohen for research within the social sciences. Then lastly, in alignment with findings that the omega coefficient offers a more accurate approximation of the internal structure of scale, we used the CFA results to calculate the McDonald's omega coefficient, and the recommended cutoff used there was, of course, then above 0.80. I've also highlighted here that as per the findings from studies that demonstrated issues with goodness of fit indices such as the RMSEA and SRMR, the CFI as the least susceptible to measurement quality was used to determine model fit. Although other more popular fit statistics were reported. And then I've just highlighted on the slide also the fit indices used, and they were appraised as follows. You will note there the lowest chi-square statistic was considered acceptable, a CFI value close to 1 or above 0.90, and then a factor determinancy value close to 1 was used. I've then highlighted also just the measurement scales used, as well as the fit results for each of them. If we look at just the CFIs provided, all the scales demonstrated adequate fit. I do note that the lecturer performance scale was deemed to be not reliable, and it further had 50% of missing data. So if we get into the data, you will note there that we tested two models. The hypothesized model, Model 1, provided poor model fit to the data. There was a CFI, you will note there, of 0.88. The model had a reduced sample size of 88. This due to the 50% of missing cases on the lecturer performance scale. An alternative model, of course, Model 2, was also tested. This excluded the lecturer performance scores, and you will note there the improved model fit. So thus Model 2, which excluded lecturer performance or that specific scale, formed the basis for the structural model. Then just look at some of the correlations and reliabilities. The correlation estimation results show that statistically significant relationships were found between all variables. McDonald's omega coefficient values range between, as you will note, 0.84 and 0.95, which were all higher than the recommended cutoff value. And then the factor determinative values were also all of them above 0.9, which is close to 1. Then if we look at the findings from the study, just to recap, in terms of the purpose of the study, we wanted to explore the interplay of the 3 psychological conditions in terms of availability, safety, and meaningfulness in stimulating engagement, and of course then engagement's role in contributing to optimal functioning within the workplace. As I've noted earlier, this was done by connecting Kahn's theory on engagement with the JDR model, organizational support theory, and perceptions of reciprocity. I've noted firstly that findings from the study revealed that all 3 psychological conditions, meaningfulness, safety, and availability, which were operationalized as lack of reciprocity, POS, and burnout, were significantly related to emotional engagement and explained 32% of the variance in emotional engagement as direct effects. I can also note here that the strongest association was that of perceived organizational support, which met the criteria for both psychological safety and meaningfulness. Burnout and lack of reciprocity, which were conceptualized as psychological availability and meaningfulness, both had small effects on engagement, although they were significant. And then job demands had no significant association with engagement. Then, in accordance with the theory on engagement and testing the interplay of psychological availability, safety, and meaningfulness, we used lack of reciprocity, which carried components of psychological meaningfulness, as a moderator on the relationship to emotional engagement. This allowed us to work within the bounds of the JDR framework. So thus, in addition, what was postulated was that in addition, lack of reciprocity would either exacerbate the negative influence of job demands and burnout on engagement, or it would weaken the impact of perceived organizational support on engagement. However, as noted, none of these moderation interactions were significant predictors of engagement. Scholars have put forth a 7-step framework in conceptualizing moderating relationships. Although most of these steps were met, it is noted that as per step 6, the inverse interaction was not considered. Findings from the study further revealed that job demands and perceived organizational support explained 35% of the variance in burnout. Both these variables had medium effects on burnout, although perceived organizational support showed a stronger negative association with burnout, more so than the influence of job demands, such as time pressure and teaching versus research tasks. Findings from the study also revealed that burnout and emotional engagement explained 39% of the variance in psychological well-being, with burnout showing a large negative effect, whilst the positive effect of engagement was recorded as small. Okay. Then lastly, findings from the study did not provide support for the mediation effects proposed. So you will note there, no support was found for the indirect effect of job demands on emotional engagement via burnout. And here a possible explanation can be found in the recommendations from Barron and Kenny, when establishing mediation, criteria include that the independent variable must also be shown to influence the dependent variable, in this case, job demands to emotional engagement. And as you would have noted earlier, results from our study did not find a significant relationship between job demands as the independent variable and engagement as the dependent variable. Then the proposed indirect effect of burnout on psychological well-being via emotional engagement was also not statistically significant. In this case, the criteria put forth by Barron and Kenny were all met, in that, as per the figure, there were significant relationships in all three directions between burnout, engagement, and psychological well-being. Here we found that scholars refer to complementary mediation as occurring in cases such as these, where, as per the model indicated, both the indirect parts, as shown here, and the direct parts are significant, but irrespective of this, results from the study indicates that there was no overall relationship that was mediated. Okay. Then, just in terms of looking at the limitations, although the study really had a strength in terms of it being strong theory-driven and the inclusion of reliable measures, I do need to highlight a few of the limitations. The first limitation of the study is its cross-sectional nature of the data, and of course reliance on self-report measures, making the study prone to common method variance, and of course we know that causal inferences cannot be made. Then, having students report on the lecturer's performance was intended initially as one of the efforts to address common method variance, and on those, although similar approaches were taken by previous studies, the scale in our study did not meet the reliability criteria for inclusion, which resulted in us not being able to test the hypothesis related to lecturer performance. Then a last limitation is that generalizability may be limited, as all participants were academic staff and students within the same university in one province in South Africa. Just lastly, if we take a look at the implications, or what this means. Findings highlighted really a greater focus from academic staff members on the actions of the organization or the institution in terms of organizational support. So when it comes to stimulating engagement, their focus was really stronger on POS rather than on job demands, which showed a non-significant association with engagement. Or interpersonal relationships via the perception of appreciation from clients, in this case being the students, and burnout, which both had small effects on engagement. So this may be explained by the fact that POS, or perceived organizational support, carries with it aspects of both psychological meaningfulness and safety, which might explain the stronger association it has with engagement. Then, of course, also in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, and as per a recent study, it may be that perceptions of organizational support, which is basically the degree to which the employee feels that or views that the employer cares for their well-being and values their contribution, that may function as an important safeguard against the negative impact the COVID-19 pandemic had on their experiences, especially within the work context. Then the findings further suggest that management within higher education should gear efforts toward enhancing organizational support. In terms of this, it may not always be possible to address perceptions of reciprocity from students as clients, for example, or to significantly alter job demands such as time pressure or teaching and research tasks, which then impact burnout. So we thus highlight that practices and interventions or policies should bring about a sense to the employee that they are valued, and highlight to them their importance in contributing to institutional objectives, especially during times of change and crisis. This is in alignment with work by a 2019 study by Volcano and Hines, who stated that organizations need to view engagement as a broad organizational study. Then just lastly, we also highlight that in looking at the predictors of psychological well-being, burnout had a large negative effect on psychological well-being, whilst the effect of engagement was regarded as small. So this really alludes to the importance of addressing burnout and other psychosocial issues, especially during times such as these. Here, university management are reminded of the impact these interventions may have on reassuring staff that they are indeed valued and that the institution cares for their well-being, which then in turn can improve perceptions of organizational support. Okay, so in line with these recommendations of providing support and setting in place the conditions that are needed to stimulate engagement, I leave you with the following quote, and it says, "Do not withhold good from those to whom it is due, when it is in your power to act." Just a note to organizations and university leaders and university management in terms of looking at these efforts. I thank you so much for your time. On this slide, I have shared the email addresses of myself, Prof. Chantal Olkers and Prof. Pieter Schaap, for any questions you may have. Thank you so much.